book lovers. It is G-Swizz here, and I'm here today because I completed the 12 Friends Recommend Me 12 Books Challenge for 2023. The amount of times I wanted to give up on this challenge. And now we're here. Now I've completed all 12 books. I finally get to talk about my experience with this challenge. I might be vague with some of these because as much as I do like recapping my reading experiences, you know, some of these I read at the very beginning of the year. Some of these I have distanced myself from because it's been months. But some of these are recent reads and I should have a good take on them. But overall, if there's anything I've taken out of this challenge, it's that this is a really good challenge to get some insight on some books that you probably would never pick up otherwise if they weren't recommended to you, or if you did not challenge yourself to read the books that your friends would recommend. In some ways, this challenge was a little bit stressful, even though I pressured myself to get out of my comfort zone and ask all of the friends who had participated if they could recommend me any book, what book would they recommend me. But also, in a way, I'm really happy I completed this challenge because I tried a lot of new things. And I'm not gonna lie, this did not help me with my mood reading. I'm a huge mood reader, but I also like to complete challenges. Like, I'm a very competitive person. I tend to enjoy reading when I pick up what I want to pick up, and some of these books I just did not want to pick up, but I did. Some of them surprised me, and some of them, unfortunately, disappointed me. We will go through this list together. So I am gonna start off with my least favorite books on this list and then move on to my favorites. I have been avoiding filming this video because a dear friend who I lost this year recommended me one of these books, and I will probably get a little bit emotional at that part of the video. Before I proceed with this video, I do want to mention that I am dedicating my video to them. I pretty much dedicate my career in books to them. If it weren't for Els, I would not have found my first circle of bookish friends, and I would not have found my way into publishing. I wouldn't have fully embraced my passion for books, and I'm just so thankful that I had the opportunity to be their friend and that I got the opportunity for them to be mine. I do need to move on with this video, but I will talk about the book that they recommended me sometime later. Thank goodness it was one that did not disappoint. You all probably could not tell this, but oh my goodness, I feel like the universe is stopping me from filming this video. Because this morning, surprisingly enough, there was drilling outside my window in the street, and we got a notice from our council or the council workers that that was only going to happen like 2 days of last week. So it looks like they were a little bit behind and they did the works today. And additionally, the last clips that you saw of me talking, it was 7 a.m. in the morning. I tried to film before work, and here I am, filming after work. But anyway, I guess without further ado, let's just get straight into this video before we get any more drilling noises, because I don't want any more. So the first book I have to mention that was recommended to me this year, that just so happens to be my most disappointing. I mean, I kind of expected it to be the most disappointing. I was taken aback as soon as I was recommended it. I'm not gonna lie, I was nervous. So I asked my colleague Jeremy if there was any book that he could possibly recommend me. What book would he recommend me? And immediately he said Jurassic Park. Before that moment, I did not take the time to consider that I was terrified of dinosaurs, because I am. I just haven't really expressed that to many people. I haven't gone out of the way to say I don't want to watch Jurassic Park because no one has like asked me about that. No one has asked me to join their binge watches. No one has invited me to go see the Jurassic World movies. So I've never really taken the time to consider just not really liking dinosaurs in general, because I'm never usually asked about my interest in Jurassic Park or dinosaurs in general. But in this situation, I was taken aback because I did not think there was a possibility of me being recommended a book about dinosaurs, and it being a horror one where dinosaurs are terrorizing everyone because of stupid people making stupid decisions to open up a park. And look, that is the purpose of this book. However, it's not really a disappointing book, even though, yes, I'm putting it on the scale of like my least favorite book that I read out of the bunch. It's not really a disappointing book because Jurassic Park proves my point that some people are just stupid. And I actually appreciate the message of the Jurassic Park book. But was it a pleasant experience? No, it wasn't. I did not want to hear about people being tortured by dinosaurs. I really did not. I just really want to erase those disgusting scenes out of my head. However, I definitely appreciated the philosophical parts of the book. If I could go back and read Jurassic Park without the dinosaur scenes and just focused on the discussions that a bunch of the scientists were having and the people in the background were having, I would actually revisit Jurassic Park. If we took the dinosaurs out of it, yes. Overall, I seriously loved the conversations that came out of the story. However, I did not enjoy the dinosaur horror. I really did not. I found myself to be really squeamish while reading this book. It was not a pleasant experience and I struggle to rate it. I would say if we were rating it in terms of enjoyment, in terms of the horror scenes, I would rate those like a 2 out of 5 stars. That being said, if I was to take those horror scenes out of the book and focus on the book's message, it would be a 4 out of 5 stars because I really enjoyed the parts where the dinosaurs weren't actually involved. And I know that defeats the purpose of reading a book like Jurassic Park, but I do like the message of this book. And the message of this book is that you can't play God. You can't just set up a theme park with dinosaurs and not expect ramifications to come out of that. These people are stupid. But I appreciate the book for that aspect, and that is why I kind of also thank my colleague Jeremy for recommending this book to me, because I'm really happy that my eyes were open to the concept of Jurassic Park. But I am not planning on watching any of the movies. I'm not planning to continue on with the series. I am just done with dinosaurs. It's a hard book to rate, and it was probably the most unpleasant experience I had out of this list, but I do still appreciate the recommendation. So I'm personally not going to rate it for that reason, but I'm happy I gave it a shot. And the next book I read for my 12 Friends Recommend Me 12 Books challenge was The Lies of Loch Lamora by Scott Lynch, and I did not really gel with this one either. I actually had very high expectations for this one. However, the problem I experienced with The Lies of Loch Lamora is a problem I experienced while reading the Six of Crows series. That being said, I was attached to the Six of Crows characters. I just didn't really care about the heist or really the premise like that was surrounding them. With The Lies of Loch Lamora, however, I just wasn't attached to the characters and I did not really care about this heist novel or the thievery, and I thought that I would have. But I think I've come to the conclusion that I am really struggling to get into heist novels and that I read The Lies of Loch Lamora at the wrong time. I'm not gonna say this is a terrible book, because I'm gonna be real, I barely remember anything about it. And that's probably because I was not ready to read a heist novel at the time, and as much as I do appreciate the 12 Friends Recommend Me 12 Books challenge, you can't guarantee that you're gonna gel with the book in the year that you read it in, if that makes sense. So who knows? I might revisit The Lies of Loch Lamora in 5 or 10 years time, but at this point I was not interested in it. This book was also recommended to me by a fellow work colleague, Bree, and funnily enough, a few weeks ago, as I'm filming this right now, Bree actually asked me about my reading experience with The Lies of Loch Lamora because they finally remembered that they recommended this book to me, and I was honest. And I'm happy that I was honest. I also had an honest conversation with a colleague about another book. I think at this point I've talked to maybe all my work colleagues about the books that they recommended me. I think with this recommendation specifically, I was actually kind of scared that Bree would ask about it, but I was honest and she appreciated my honesty. She also recommended me another book as well that kind of is heisty but is kind of easier to get into and is YA, so eventually I will get into Thieves Gambit as well. I mean, I've wanted to read Thieves Gambit for a while, but thankfully she has read it and she's let me know that it's much easier to get into, so hopefully I won't be scared of heist novels forever. I love the idea of heists, but I am so much better with visualizing it, like actually watching a heist go down, than reading about one. Like when I have to read about one, I'm just not interested in it. And as much as I do appreciate a good thievery story every once in a while, sometimes thieves are just really difficult to read about because it's not as compelling when you're not visualizing it, if that makes sense. I did struggle to get into the story. I was also intimidated by the fact that it was a pretty long novel as well, but I guess I can try some other time. So I'm gonna say never with The Lies of Loch Lamora, and I am not gonna rate this one because I don't think that it's my place to rate it, personally, considering that I barely remember anything about it and it just wasn't what I wanted to read at the time. That all being said, I can't say that it's a terrible book. That's why I'm not rating it at the moment. Lol, I lied when I said that I talked to all my work colleagues about the books that they recommended me, because I still haven't talked about Finnegan of the Rock with Emily yet, and I haven't worked with her in the office for a while because she works from another state, so I just haven't had like that casual conversation with her yet. But she recommended this to me back in December when I was like, guys, please help me with my recommendations, and Emily came through with Finnegan of the Rock. This was very sweet, but it was also a little bit too long. I did somewhat enjoy Finnegan of the Rock, but I felt like it was was a little bit too unnecessarily long and dense for the little story slash plot that we actually got. I did enjoy the world and I did enjoy the characters, and I would be interested in continuing on with the rest of the books if I know for certain that the other books are not as dense, but I reckon that the books get bigger as the series goes along, and I'm not too sure how much plot is within the other two books. They are companion sequels as well. I also found Finnegan of the Rock to be a little bit predictable. However, I reckon I should have read it back in high school. I did also put this as my Pop Sugar Reading Challenge prompt book pick for a book that you should have read in high school. I personally reckon that I should have read Finnegan of the Rock in high school because Melina Marchetta is an Australian author, and a lot of my friends back in the day read Melina Marchetta and they read Finnegan of the Rock, Looking for Alibrandi, On the Jellicoe Road, etc. She is a very popular Australian novelist, and specifically for the young adult audience. So yeah, a lot of my friends were reading her books back when they were younger, and I never got to. So thankfully this helped me complete a Pop Sugar Reading Challenge prompt. Additionally, it gave me a new recommendation for my cousin who loves middle grade. I reckon that this is a perfect series for her to read to transition out of middle grade into young adult eventually. So I'm looking forward to recommending this one to her. I did enjoy this one, it's just not a favorite, that's all. I gave this one like around a 3 to 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was good, it wasn't great in my opinion, but I did enjoy it. And another book that was recommended to me by a work colleague was The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This was recommended to me by my colleague Kiara. This is her favorite book, and it took me a while to get into. Pro tip, if you are planning to listen to this one on audiobook, you need to be prepared that we only have one narrator, and that one narrator is Donna Tartt herself. I am just hoping that eventually Audible Studios will consider doing some sort of full cast production, because I think a long book like this, with how dramatic it gets, needs to have a full cast production. Don't get me wrong, Donna Tartt is a good audiobook narrator. Was she a good audiobook narrator for the story specifically? I don't know, because I really struggled to get into this book because of her narration, and I know a lot of you guys might be thinking, well, why didn't you get the physical copy? Why didn't you actually read the physical book? And that is because I did not want to spend my money on a physical copy when I could use an Audible credit to purchase the audiobook. And if I don't like it, I at least have 365 days to return the audiobook, which I did, because I really did not like Donna Tartt's narration personally. And you know what? Maybe, just maybe, I might repurchase the audiobook if we have a full cast production. But yeah, no, I really struggle with this audiobook. I don't think I'm going to re-listen to it ever. However, I did enjoy the story after we got over the first third of it, I believe. I think things start picking up after the 200-page mark. That's what I keep on hearing. And at times I did get lost, and I would have to refer back to this video. Mo Black, I believe, oh my goodness, they do an amazing breakdown of the story and its characters. The Secret History is their favorite book, so I'm really happy that they have that breakdown video. It was very good to watch that breakdown video after reading the book, because I just needed to confirm that I was reading something that was completely out of the ordinary. The Secret History, I'd have to say, is pretty iconic, but the first parts, like, it did not need to be that long. The Secret History just does not need to be this long. That is why I've put it pretty low on the list. I reckon that if The Secret History was like 200 pages shorter, I think I would have enjoyed the book a lot more. However, I think I would have enjoyed it much more if we had a full cast production for the audiobook, because oh my goodness, I don't think I could deal with the same voice for that long. Like, look, Donna Tartt, you're not a terrible narrator. It's just, I don't think that you should have narrated your own story personally. Like, in this situation, I think you should have just invited a full cast. That's it. That's it. Penguin. I don't know if it's like Donna or Penguin, but like both of you guys, work it out. Work out a full cast production. It would work so much better for the story. So I rated The Secret History 3.5 out of 5 stars, and I think I would have been able to rate it like a solid 4 or 4.5 if the first chunk of the book wasn't so long and so drawn out, so unnecessary. Like, I just didn't need to hear about rich people problems all the time. But secondly, if the audiobook narration was much better, I think I will revisit The Secret History probably in 10 or 20 years time, and I will be revisiting it in a different format, whether it's a full cast production of The Secret History or if it's like a physical copy. I don't know. I might consider purchasing the book, but I don't think I'm gonna reread it anytime soon, especially because we got Mo Black's breakdown of it. I kind of just want to watch that breakdown again because I just kind of want to relive how chaotic it is from someone someone else's eyes. And the next book I have to mention that a friend recommended to me was The Goblin Emperor by Catherine Addison. This was recommended to me by a good friend, Allison. I'm not gonna say that I don't like this book. I think that it's good. I just kind of expected it to be a favorite, honestly. I think that it was cozy and it was okay. I personally would comp this to another book that was also recommended to me on this list, but I will talk about that one later because I actually enjoyed that one a little bit more. I did like the message about having a community. It was very sweet. I just found it to be a little bit long, that's all. And I found myself struggling to engage in parts, I think because of the length and because I expected something that was a little bit more intense, but ended up being a lot more cozy than anything. I enjoyed it overall. I just think that for how cozy it was, it could have been shorter. I don't think I'm going to continue on with the series, but I do appreciate this book for what it is. I also gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars, but I think I had a more positive experience with The Goblin Emperor because I did really like the audiobook narration for this one, and I don't have the same criticisms as The Secret History. I don't know, I think The Secret History I could have liked more than The Goblin Emperor if it did not have the problems that I mentioned previously. That's why I'm kind of like rating them the same, but in terms of ranking, I think that my experience with The Goblin Emperor is more positive than the experience I had with The Secret History. And the next book that I have to mention that a friend recommended me for this challenge is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. So this was recommended to me by my work colleague Tiana. I actually specifically approached Tiana because she reads a lot of fantasy romance and she reads a lot of similar romance to me, like very similar genres to me, but she just so happens to like historical fiction as well, and I do struggle with historical fiction. Fun fact, so I was in the middle of the Twisted Lies audiobook and she had brought her physical copy to work and I was like, shut up, no way. We're book twinning right now. We're reading the same book, and it's so funny because we did not coordinate that. We didn't even plan a buddy read. That was so funny. I'm still in the middle of reading it as I'm filming this right now. That one's taking me a little bit of time, but it's just really, really funny to go to work and find out that you and your colleague are reading the same thing and you guys just did not coordinate it whatsoever. So Tiana and I have very similar interests in books. We are also very much obsessed with Carissa Broadbent. She's very much obsessed with The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I'm obsessed with The War of Lost Hearts. Very similar reading tastes. However, she has the audacity to recommend me a historical fiction. I asked her if she could recommend me any book, what would it be? And she said The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I was like, oh! I was like, really? Like, why would you recommend me a historical fiction? But she told me that it's incredible and that I need to read it. And she was right. It's such a good book. It's really good. And I still struggle with the fact that it's like this low on the list. That's because I did enjoy the books higher on this list a little bit more in terms of story. I did struggle to get into The Nightingale. I initially picked it up, read the first few chapters, and then put it down for a month or 6 weeks, and then picked it back up. And I'm so happy that I took a break from reading The Nightingale because I'm pretty sure I was struggling with a really bad book hangover the first time I picked the book up. So I'm really happy I got over that book hangover and finally went back and picked the book up. And then I kind of listened to this audiobook in one sitting. Well, technically 2 sittings. So I started the audiobook, listened to a few chapters, put it down, and then the next time I picked this audiobook up, I kind of spent the rest of the day listening to it. I could not stop listening to the story. I was so compelled. Yeah, Tiana was right. The Nightingale was incredible. My only critique of The Nightingale is the fact that it took me a while to get into, but once I got into the swing of things, once one character decides to go down a specific path for her life, things got interesting from there. At least they did for me personally. So The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna got a 4 or 4.5 out of 5 stars. I did struggle to give it a 5 only because getting into the book and stuff, and I really struggle with historical fiction and being engaged in it. However, this is a perfect historical fiction for those who struggle with historical fiction and are wanting to read a historical fiction for the sake of reading one for a readathon where you're meant to read a historical fiction or a challenge prompt, or if you're just wanting to get into the genre in general. It's just a really touching story. I cried a lot reading this book. It was so worth it. And yes, I definitely thank my colleague Tiana. Like, I know she could have recommended me anything else. There were so many options she could have recommended me, but she decided to go with one that she believed everyone needed to read, and I'm really happy that she did, because I really enjoyed The Nightingale. I should not judge a book by its cover nor its genre. And another book a friend recommended me for this challenge was The Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King. And this one wasn't exactly recommended by a friend, this was recommended by my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law, Ileana, stayed in this apartment for 2 months, and from what she saw in our apartment, I very much love fantasy. I love reading fantasy, and she loves Stephen King. She is kind of obsessed with Stephen King. I'm trying to remember what book she was reading at the time, but she was reading a Stephen King novel while she was here, and she was very much enjoying her reading experience with that novel, and she wanted to recommend me a Stephen King novel, but she did not want to recommend something super scary because I don't really read horror as frequently, so she recommended me a fantasy standalone by Stephen King, and that was The Eyes of the Dragon. And honestly, I feel so honored to have received this recommendation. It made me feel very special that she would consider that I am a huge fantasy fan, and that Ileana also recommended me this book because it's a very special book to her. I'm very grateful to have received this recommendation, and I did mention that The Goblin Emperor was a very cozy fantasy. The Goblin Emperor very much reminded me of The Eyes of the Dragon, except in my personal opinion, The Eyes of the Dragon is much better paced and it just works well. I mean, and I'm not saying that The Goblin Emperor doesn't work well, it's just I felt like The Goblin Emperor kind of like dragged on a little bit too much, whereas The Eyes of the Dragon was the perfect pace. It got straight to the point, and it was a story about family and the beauty of finding each other, and I really appreciated the message overall. I gave The Eyes of the Dragon around a 4 to 4.5 out of 5 stars. Very similar rating to The Nightingale. I just found it to be better paced, and I find that this recommendation was very special as well, so that definitely made the experience a little bit more positive. So I'm very much happy that I got recommended this book, and I'm happy that I read it. And the next book I have to mention that a friend recommended me to read this year was actually the one I anticipated loving the most, and unfortunately I did not love it the most. However, I still enjoyed it, and that, my friends, is Silver Under Nightfall by Rincha Peko. So I have previously read a few books by Rincha Peko. I read the entirety of the Bone Witch trilogy, and it took a while to get into that trilogy, and funnily enough, it took me, let's say, halfway through book 2 to fully get into it, but I am so happy that I got into it because, oh my goodness, when the big plot twist happens in the series, everything just became so worth it. Like, I am obsessed with the Bone Witch trilogy because I stuck it out. It's a really difficult series to stick out, but it's good. And Silver Under Nightfall was actually recommended by a fellow booktuber here, and that just so happens to be Beck over at Beckle Books. Go subscribe to her. This is one of her favorite books. I believe it was her favorite book of last year or this year. So I read Silver Under Nightfall. I actually had 5-star predictions for this book prior to Beck recommending it to me, and unfortunately I could not give it a 5 out of 5 stars. I gave it a generous 4, and I'm not necessarily saying that it's a generous 4 because the story is bad, because the story is actually really good. I just struggled with the way that it was told narratively. I just initially thought that narratively we would be following the trio, that we would get all of their POVs, and this book, by the way, is told in 3rd person POV, but follows Remy specifically. But there are moments where he's like walking out of a room and action is happening in another room, and at certain points as a reader I felt like I was being left out of some things. And look, it's a good story. I love the world building, I love the concept, and I would definitely recommend it for a good Halloween read or a spooky time read if you're wanting something that is paranormal, supernatural, that has a very healthy polyamorous relationship dynamic. I truly appreciate all 3 characters, but I just really struggled with the way that the story was told narratively, and I'm really hoping that the sequel or any sequels in the future will improve upon the narrative. I just felt like Remy was left out of a few things, and this wasn't even first person POV, this was 3rd person POV, but just specifically following Remy majority of the time. However, I am so looking forward to the rest of the series, so I am going to be continuing on. I am a little bit bitter about not loving this book as much as I wanted to, because I feel like this book had everything going for it. I just really struggled with the way that it was told narratively. But overall, I still enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and it's definitely my thing. I just really struggled with the narration, that's all. And the next book that was recommended to me by a friend was actually recommended to me by my husband. I read Inuyasha Volume 1, and I cannot wait to continue on. Just based on Volume 1 alone, it ranks number 4 on this list in terms of favorites, but I cannot wait to continue on with the rest of the series. I think it's just too early to tell how I'm going to feel about the rest of the series. However, I know that Inuyasha goes on a beautiful character development journey, and I cannot wait to see it as I go along throughout the story. But yeah, I wasn't expecting Inuyasha to be this dark, and I wasn't expecting, you know, like a nude scene in there as well. about, because Inuyasha is rated teen plus, it's not rated mature, so that definitely caught me off guard. I was like, whoa, okay, this is definitely for older readers. That being said, I don't have a huge problem with it. I'm just very much looking forward to getting into this fantasy world. I really feel like I don't have much more to say about Inuyasha, but I'm just really excited to continue on with the series, and I'm so glad that Camilo recommended this first volume to me. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed my time with it. I found it to be funny. That's why I ranked it at number 4. At spot number 3, we have The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This was actually recommended to me by Abby over at Abby Lisi the Book Lover. She actually chose 3 books for me. I went to Abby's DMs. I'm like, hey, this whole challenge, I have been given a bunch of intimidating book recommendations, with the exception of only one romance, which I will mention later on in this video. But I was like, Abby, please help. Please recommend me a romance. So she recommended me 3. She recommended me The X-Talk, which I read separately and I really enjoyed. She recommended me Love on the Brain, which funnily enough is one of my most disappointing books that I've read as of recent days. I really did not enjoy Love on the Brain. And then she recommended me The Dead Romantics. And I just thought, you know what? Why not try The Dead Romantics? I purchased the Fairy Loot edition because it was so pretty. I was like, oh my goodness, I need it in my collection. And I read it and I absolutely enjoyed it. But I think I appreciate it even more now that I recently lost a friend. It's just so touching. Like, I initially cried while reading this book, but it did not hit hard back then as it does now, like thinking about it, and I think I'm gonna revisit it in the future, because books like The Dead Romantics, The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy, Belladonna, etc., ones that have to do with death as a theme, while sometimes it's hard to swallow, at times it can be very comforting for someone who has recently experienced a loss. And so thinking about this book, I'm even more pleased with it. I think initially I gave it like a 4 out of 5 stars. I might change my rating to 5 only because the story means a lot to me now. Yeah, it's weird. I know grief is so weird, but I really enjoyed this one, and I know that Abby did not see what was coming in my life. I mean, I honestly hope it wasn't on anyone's bingo card, but I'm so thankful that Abby took the time to recommend me a book and that I got to read The Dead Romantics. I really enjoyed The Dead Romantics and I found a favorite. And spot number 2 goes to Ashes of the Sun by Django Wexler. This was an unexpected favorite. So this was recommended to me by a fellow booktuber, Brianna, over at Four Paws and a Book. I was recommended this one over Twitter, and oh my goodness, Brianna, this book is really good. Thank you for recommending it to me. I was scared of this one for similar reasons why I was scared of The Lies of Locke Lamora and The Secret History and Finnegan of the Rock. This one just looks like very dense in terms of length, but it was so engaging. I feel like rereading it. I unfortunately did not go straight into the sequels after reading this first book, so eventually I do want to go back and reread this first book and continue on with the rest of the series, because this was mind-blowingly amazing, and I think a good series to comp this series too, in terms of how it was an engaging fantasy that was able to draw in new readers. It very much reminds me of my reading experience with my favorite series of the year, the War of Lost Hearts series. I personally think that fantasy should be accessible to all readers, and I think that Ashes of the Sun by Django Wexler is a very easy one to get your start into high fantasy. And I know that this book isn't technically classified as like young adult. I would classify it as new adult or maybe even older, but it is so easy to get into for young adult fantasy readers. It is a dense series in terms of length. However, Ashes of the Sun was so easy to get sucked into. I highly recommend it to those who are wanting a new and fresh fantasy. I could not recommend this one enough, and I'm so happy that Brianna recommended this one to me. It was definitely worth that recommendation and so much more. I definitely reckon that this book series is underrated and does not deserve to be slept on. It is so good. I just want people to read it, and I cannot wait to get back into the series when I have the opportunity to. I listened to this one on audiobook, by the way, and unlike some of the audiobook performances I had mentioned earlier, Imogen Church nails this audiobook. She does the voices very well. She is able to keep you engaged. I am so happy that I listened to this one on audiobook, but I do want the physical copies for my collection because it's a very special series to me, or at least the first book's very special to me because I need to continue on with the series. Okay, now this is the hard part of the video because now I talk about my number 1 out of the 12 friends recommend me 12 books challenge, and I promise I did not put this as number 1 because Els recommended it to me. I initially had this as number 1 because the story meant a lot to me when I first read it. I really feel like Beach Read by Emily Henry got me. This is my favorite book by Emily Henry as I'm filming this right now. I've only read 2 books by Emily Henry. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars instantly. So this was recommended by my friend Els. She also went by Beth. I put her name is Beth on the board because at the time that was the name on her Facebook profile, and for some reason I felt like I needed to put her name as Beth on the board when really she was okay to be known as Els Beth or Elsbeth. She had many names to many people. However, as I'm speaking right now, I will be referring to her as Els because I knew her as Els. I talked to her as Els. She wasn't too fussed with what you called her. I've known Els for a while. I actually was surprised that she didn't recommend me a Regency romance because she was very much into historical romance, and I found it quite fascinating that she recommended me Beach Read. And I found the story to be quite healing. I read it in January of this year. Ironically, the protagonist's name is January as well, and it was a beautiful story of finding yourself again and forgiveness and letting go, but also starting fresh. I understand why not everyone loves this book and why people find the love story frustrating. I get it, but this story was definitely the protagonist's personal journey. And I think overall, seeing it as a personal story rather than a romance story definitely helped me with how I perceived the book. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It was a beautiful book. And I think what I really struggle with right now is the fact that I'm talking about it right now, and I kind of just wish that I could gush about it with Els. I think I will forever associate Beach Read with my friend Els. Els was a very comforting person to talk to. Back when I went to Sydney Writers Festival and all these other book events, I was very ashamed. Els and myself, we were both Christian. I'm Christian, Els was Christian. And when I found out that Els and I shared faith, I felt comfortable for the very first time in front of new bookish people, only because I had grown up in the church and everything I did, every hobby that I had revolved around church before I found the book community. I had studied at Bible college and I was just trying to find new career paths and new prospects, and also I was discovering books. I was really enjoying books, but everything that I did back in the day was in ministry. I was a youth leader. I was a worship leader. I was known to be in a musical family. My family name before I took on my husband's name. The family is very much well known in the church for serving for years, and I could never really separate myself from that, and I could not find my own independence. And that wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but I never took the time to discover what I wanted to do with my future. And you know, eventually my road led to publishing, and I'm so happy that I work in publishing now, but I think it just felt really lonely at first to connect with anyone in bookish spaces. And Els just so happened to come into my life and welcome me into the friendship group, and Allison, who also recommended a book on this list, was someone that Els connected me with, and now we're very good friends. We keep in touch very frequently, and I definitely owe my career to Els. But I bring this up because I found my conversations with Els at the time to be absolutely healing and inviting. She invited me into this community, and I think she reassured me that I could have faith and be a fangirl at the same time. I know that Natasha Paulus talked about this on her channel years back, and I took a lot of inspiration from her video, but it just felt really good to have someone to go to at that time and over the years. And Beach Read was also a very healing story for me at the age where I'm at. I mean, I believe I met Els when I was 19 or 20. As I'm filming this right now, I'm 27, and I feel as if a story like Beach Read definitely resonated a bit more at this time. And so I just felt like it was so on brand for Els to recommend me a healing book, because I felt like the conversations that we would have with each other about coming from a faith background and coming into this community of book lovers and being embraced by the book community, all of it just felt so healing and so touching, and I don't think I would be where I am now if it weren't for Els. I truly believe that she changed my life, and this book definitely blew my mind, and I want to reread it in the future, and I want to forever look at it honoring Els' memory, and I never want to forget what Els did for me and how she made me feel welcome in this community. And she was gone too soon. But I'm so thankful for the time that I got with her. I really am. And funnily enough, Beach Read also has themes of grief as well. I'm still learning how to grieve. Yeah, I've been avoiding filming this video for a while. I thought I would be much messier while talking about this. I'm still processing everything. It's hard. And if you're struggling with grief out there as well, I've been told multiple times by those who are pretty healthy at, you know, dealing with people with grief. I don't don't know what I'm saying. It's okay if it doesn't get easier. There are times where I tell myself it's gotten easier, but I'm gonna be real, it hasn't. I lost a good friend at a young age, but actually no but. Actually no buts. It hurts. However, I am thankful for everyone out there who has been supporting me during this time. And I'm gonna choose, going forward, to continually be inspired by Els. She supported this channel. She supported G-Swizzle. She even had my contact name on her phone as Grace Swizzle. That was really funny. Yeah, wow, she was hilarious. I know all of you guys don't know her, so I'm sorry that I'm going on about her, and you know, I'm trying to move on. But I also feel like it's a little bit of a disservice to move on when this right here is kind of my final memory of her. And right now, I just want to take the time to honor it. I miss you, Els. I'll see you in another life. I feel as if this is my final goodbye. Like, even though the funeral happened, I feel as if this is my final goodbye, because right here, I'm talking about it right now, and I knew I was gonna make this video. I knew that she had recommended me a book, and this is like the final thing I have. So, rest in peace, Els. But I am gonna continue to make bookish content in her honor. I'm gonna continue working my career in her honor. Every bookish thing I do, I'm going to continue doing it inspired by the courage that Els gave me before. And for that, I'm so grateful. And on that note, I guess that's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. To all my friends who recommended me books for this challenge, thank you. I did struggle through this challenge, I know, and at this point, I don't know whether or not I'll do this challenge ever again, but I'm happy I completed it at least 1 year in my life. And if you happen to stay to the end of the video, leave me the red heart emoji, because I feel like we all need to share the love right now. And if you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also, I have social medias. I'm at Gswizzlebooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. And finally, I'm at TikTok. I'm at Gswizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there for some bookish content. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace.
And I flipped it in a double. Started out with half and I flipped it in a double.